Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today I have a special guest, JD Rucker. He is a conservative activist. He wears many hats in this field, so I don't want to go into all of his titles, but he has been banned from Spotify. How about you tell us about that?
Spotify. Yeah, they don't like me very much. We're still to this day, we don't know why, but they did more than just ban us. They actually aggressively went after us to the point of our old podcast host was Transistor. And so they banned us, and then they contacted Transistor and said, hey, we're banning these guys. You guys should too. So I get a nice note from Transistor saying, hey, we're banning you. So we move over to Captivate, which is another high quality podcast host. Again, and keep in mind, these are paid accounts that we have with these companies. The next day, I get an email from the CEO who says, "Hey, yeah, we saw about the banning. Apparently, we made news in some industry newsletter, and so we heard about the banning. We looked into it. We're banning it too. Sorry." So it's like, wow, okay. I guess they're just trying to completely erase the podcast. And keep in mind, if they do that, you have to be on a podcast hosting service in order to be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, all that good stuff. So they were trying to eliminate this altogether. And I don't know why. I mean, the thing that I have as the most likely scenarios would be voter fraud in general, which we openly talk about. Look, if you're trying to keep your channels up and alive, I'm probably the wrong guy to have on your show, because I'll talk about voter fraud. I think that it happened. I'll talk about the coronavirus vaccine or whatever. I'll talk about the coronavirus itself. I'll talk about the flu. I don't believe that you can go from 400,000 cases of the flu and 22,000 deaths from the flu in the 2019-2020 season, and then suddenly the latest numbers for this season is 165. Okay, I'm not buying it. I'll say the name's Eric Charmella, and yeah, and I don't think that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. So lots of reasons why they would ban me.
And I want to highlight that because, you are kind of a threat to, legacy media in that sense. If they are trying to ban you, it is because you're doing something right. So let's just dive into the topic about Trump. And I want to ask more macro questions about Trump and how we should look back on him and how we should move forward with this in mind. And, but first, just tell us about yourself. How did you come to Christ?
So this has been, I wish that I had one of those cool, fancy stories. I wish I could say, hey, it was, I was sitting there. Who was one of my favorites was, like, I think Michael Brown, Dr. Michael Brown, who he was, into drugs and long-haired hippie. And one day
Mike Lindell.
I think,
okay.
Yeah, I know he was definitely has a different one too, or has one very similar. Mine's nothing that dramatic. I met my wife. We thought we were Christians, basically. We were raised Christians, and so we just thought we were. And over time, as we read our Bibles together, she started getting a lot more into a lot of Old Testament stuff. I started looking more into prophetic stuff, and then, suddenly we're there. Just, I don't know. I guess you could say learning exponentially faster than anything we'd done in school, anything we'd done in church or Bible school. And so one day, and I couldn't tell you when it was. It could be because the days, when you're married to somebody that you love for 27 years, you tend to, there's not much difference between what was happening 5 years ago and what was happening 15 years ago and what was happening 25 years ago. So one day in that time period, we just realized, wow, what would happen if we were put into a situation, let's say, for example, there were terrorists, okay, and terrorists had my whole family kidnapped, and they're going to kill, my kids, kill my wife, do horrible, horrible things to them, behead them, and I could stop it. All I have to do is to denounce Christ. And look, I'm sorry, honey, but I can't. As much as I don't want anything bad to happen to you or to the kids, I can't do that. And she's like, no, I totally understand. Hey, look, I would do anything for you, babe. But if you're suffering and the only way to save you would be to denounce Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, then sayonara. I hope to see you in the next life.
So you and your wife came to Christ at the same time?
It wasn't so much the same time as much as the same life, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. Because again, I wish I could say, one day, poof, there was this
okay, so you're not sure you have a pinpoint moment.
There is no pinpoint moment. That's the whole point, is that it's as if our lives have always been intertwined in that regard, whether we knew it or not. And there was, it's kind of like saying, when did you grow up and realize that you actually did like fried chicken? For me, it was later in life. Okay, I do remember that as a child, I hated fried chicken, and I know that today I love fried chicken. I just don't know when that happened. I couldn't tell you the fried chicken epiphany moment. I know that as a Christian, I'm supposed to have that moment. I'm supposed to be able to say, on July 14th of 1986, I was on a park bench and suddenly it came to me that I need to read the Bible. I spent 3 days reading the Bible. No, I don't have that moment. All I have is my life, and I know that.
I know I
have different.
a moment where Christianity sort of clicked, where it seemed, where I came to the realization that, it wasn't just an intellectual acknowledgement.
Right.
But I was raised and would agree with most of Christian teaching. It was just, all it took was that acknowledgement, or the acknowledgement that it was not just an intellectual acknowledgement, that you have to go all in on a faith level. And it was kind of like that. Right.
By the way, I'm not suggesting that there wasn't a moment. I just don't know when it was.
Yeah, I understand.
It wasn't, maybe there was a time, an instant, I don't know it. And neither does my wife.
Now,
neither do my kids.
Now, my next question is kind of similar. So how did you become a conservative? Because I've heard you talk about this in the past, and it's very integral to how you operate.
When it comes to, my mother was very, very far to the left.
Like Berkeley
family,
like California, Berkeley left, or
yeah. She was a nurse practitioner, and she did a lot of, I don't know the easiest way to put it. She was very open to pretty much anything. She didn't try to indoctrinate me. Okay. She didn't try to convince me that she never asked me what my gender, what I felt my gender was, or anything like that. She didn't try to do this, that, or the other. She had certain special, she was a Roman Catholic. She did, on her deathbed, she's still doing her thing. I'm not Catholic,
so rosary?
I don't know. Yeah, but it was my mother and her family, they're Filipino. I'm half Filipino, and I have the stuff I never quite understood. I didn't really grow up that way, but it was what it was. Now my dad It was. I always call him my dad. I should be very clear. He's my stepdad. He was very conservative. He married my mom. I was 12, and his entire shtick was very, very religious, non-Catholic, very religious, and also conservative. I wouldn't say that he was. I mean, he was definitely a role model for sure, but I wouldn't say that he completely guided me into it. But it's right. Here's what's going to happen when you start to get to my age or older. You start understanding that the things that perhaps you thought were the reasons for this, that, or the other may not have been, and maybe in the future you find out that they were. Just like I'm not a huge fan, because I know you're going to ask one of your future questions is going to be about how to look back at Trump. And I've never been a big fan of looking back at anything, whether it's my life or somebody else's life. I'm not to say that I'm not a student of history, but that is much less relevant to me than what we take away from it. How does it affect, number one, most importantly today, okay, the hierarchy of things. Where are we today? That's the most important thing. Where are we tomorrow is the second most important. And where are we yesterday? That's the least important to me. I'm not, that's not to say, so you must be one of those guys that believes that, whatever anybody does in the past, it shouldn't have an effect. No,
Hakuna Matata mentality.
No, not even. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but it's you got to leave the past behind you.
Right.
No,
but
yeah, no, I get it. But it's I can't believe you just bust out the Lion King reference on me.
Which is the opposite
perfect
message of that movie. The movie's message is not Hakuna Matata. It's the opposite message. But you're saying that's not the mentality, or you have a mentality that looks forward rather than backwards, but it's not Hakuna Matata. Right,
exactly. And it's not even look forward, it's look at now. Let's face it, biblically speaking, we are supposed to live in the moment. We are supposed to let the future happen. We're supposed to be today, right now, is when we're supposed to be our best, as best as we can be. And we're supposed to this is why, I still sometimes feel guilty if I'm enjoying myself. I know that that's not the way that we're told, but if I'm having a moment where, I'm just doing something that's frivolous, something that is not advancing the kingdom, something that is not, informing or alerting or engaging with people in some regard that can benefit this world from a biblical perspective, then I almost feel like this is a waste of time. I think I'll admit one of the first things I think that, where I wanted to reach out to you, this has been 3 years ago, was and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was you, but it was
summer of 2017 or
did you write reviews of Game of Thrones?
Oh, Game of Thrones, yeah.
So I know that you and I have share kinship of when it comes to entertainment. I love movies. I love television shows. You do too. I can no longer watch them. And I specifically eliminate, number one, anything that
HBO.
Pretty well. No, we did watch. So listen, I'll admit we watched Perry Mason with Matthew Reese. It's one of the new series. Other than there's a little bit of nudity, not much. It's pretty. There were some gruesome parts, but for the most part, it wasn't like Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? I made it through about, I think, 45 seconds of a Game of Thrones episode, and I was done. So it's not all of HBO. I still enjoy The Wire. We've watched 4 seasons of The Wire.
Game of Thrones. The Wire. I love The Wire.
We're almost gonna. We're gonna.
That doesn't have that much nudity in it that I recall.
No, it's not just the nudity. Again,
because The Wire is a political drama and stuff like that, and
yeah. But I mean, it is what it is.
I think the problem with Game of Thrones became that they tried to make non-woke material woke.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Yeah, at first they're just depicting incest, and it's really weird. Like, I'm not endorsing this or anything, but they used nude scenes to do exposition dumps,
right.
to explain
You know what the
character.
funny part is?
Like,
Here's
that's
the
what they
oddest
were
thing.
doing.
The oddest thing that I think I've, talk about strange timing. The scene that turned me off, I think, is literally, I walked in, my son was watching it, adult son, let's be clear. My adult son was watching it. And the scene that he's like, I'm like, what is he doing? And he's inspecting this girl. It's like, oh, that's his sister. And I'm like, she's topless. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm not watching this. I'm not watching this. It's funny.
Yeah, I know which scene you're talking. And
the weird guy, the creepy dude.
Yeah, okay. So, it's kind of interesting because I always wondered which character in Game of Thrones is Donald Trump. And the
is that him?
No.
Okay.
You're talking about Viserys, and no, I actually think Ned Stark is Ned Stark is closest to Donald Trump, and that's ironic because Ned Stark is always revered as this honorable man.
Right.
But Ned Stark was politically naive.
Right.
And this is I'm going by the book series, not the show. In the books, he goes down to the capital city with 50 soldiers. And every other person you hear about in reference to how much guard they brought, always triple digits. Always. So it's like he didn't bring enough soldiers, which would end up being his downfall. But he didn't know the capacity of his office. He was basically second in command of the entire realm. He was second in command, did not use his power. And you see that later on, people who are given that same authority know how to use it. And I think that's Donald Trump. If you were to compare him to a Game of Thrones character, ironically, a Game of Thrones character sacked with the reputation of being an adulterer, it'd be Ned Stark.
Hey,
and
winter is coming.
Right. And so you founded a political party in the past under the premise that the GOP was dead. And this was around the time Trump became president. What were your lessons from that experience?
So the number one, work with Christians. Okay. If you really want to break down what the biggest takeaway was. As for me, I'm not talking about I learned a lot of political lessons about Donald Trump, about the GOP, about conservatism, about federalism, about all these various concepts, situations in life. But when it comes to personally, I want to work directly with Christians. I know that, there's probably some law against that says, oh, you can't work with Christians unless it's a organization. Are you saying that you're not going to hire an atheist or a Muslim or a Hindu? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that when I'm looking for people to work with, whether it's collaboration, for example, on Knock Report, would I hire a Jewish or a Muslim writer? Sure, but we're not hiring. We're not making that kind of money yet. So we don't hire people. We take volunteers, which we do have, by the way, Jewish and Muslim writers. I'm not suggesting that I wouldn't directly work with anyone who's not a Christian, but I know this, that when I break down what happened with the Federalist Party, the best concepts, the best ideas did come from those who were fellow followers of Christ, and the directional poor ideas, the bad concepts, which, by the way, turn out to be blessings, and I'll explain that here in a second. But those bad ideas invariably came from the non-Christians within the group, and they seemed to band together. I don't know how. I don't think it was intentional. Could have been. I may just be naive. It could have been, but here's the thing. I look back. And to be clear, so we formed a political party in the beginning of 2017, shortly after Donald Trump was inaugurated. This political party was prompted by the GOP, the Republican National Convention, at which point, immediately following the convention, is where I dropped my Republican moniker, my Republican label, and said, hey, let's form a new political party. there was a lot of interest in at the time. There was a lot of, there's a difference. I think there's a huge difference between true never Trumpers and those who opposed the Republican establishment and those who were skeptical of Donald Trump. I fall into the latter category. It's not that I, hated, I wasn't a true never Trumper. I just never, I thought he was going to be, I didn't know I was wrong. Okay. I thought he was going to lurch to the left.
I thought he would be really a Mitt Romney.
I thought he'd be worse than Mitt Romney. I thought,
I don't know.
I'm not
It's pretty hard to be worse than Mitt Romney.
Well, Mitt Romney, Donald Trump was in favor of partial birth abortion at one point. Mitt Romney's never been.
Yeah, he was pro-abortion as governor of Massachusetts.
Not partial birth abortion. He was politically pro-abortion. Donald Trump is a private citizen, which as a private citizen, you can express your actual true beliefs and not trying to pander to the moderates and the left in Massachusetts when he's running for governor. There's a difference.
I would agree. He was not very pro-life, as you would call it. Like I've kind of dropped the label pro-life when the whole womb to tomb arguments start coming up. But Donald Trump was not very staunch in opposing abortion. He was. Well, no. Yeah, he made the comment during the campaign in 2016 that Planned Parenthood does a lot of great things. Like right. He made that comment. You wouldn't expect someone that's pro-life to make that comment. So this is the environment.
I thought prior to the 2016 election, I thought that he was going to work more closely with Nancy and Chuck than with Paul and McConnell. As it turned out, it didn't matter. Okay, because all four were swamp creatures. They were always against him, but at the time, at least I thought he's going to lurch to the left, and I was wrong. He didn't. There was some. I don't want to make it sound like I became a sycophant and started agreeing with everything. I opposed Trump on a lot of issues. I opposed him on the tariffs. Okay, I thought that he handled the tariffs wrong. I opposed him on the bump stock ban. Okay, I think that they should not have put the bump stock ban in.
And I remember you changed your position on the tariffs issue, saying if you're going to do this, you need to go all in.
I did. It's a great memory.
Just
no half measures.
No half measures.
Right.
Mike Ehrmantraut of Breaking Bad. No half measures.
There we go. Yeah, and that's the thing is that we, if we were going to have to go down the road of tariffs, then my perspective was, let's go push all the way through so we can get back to free trade. Now, the funny part is that since then, my perspective has evolved even further to say that tariffs are bad, except in certain situations, such as with China. Now, the whole, I have, that would be, I would say a lot of things President Trump, basically came to my side on, so to speak, or started to agree with conservatives. Trade is the one thing where I can say he pulled me more towards his side than anything else. It was very shocking to be transparent. But anyways, back to your original question, as far as, how this got started. I want to make one final point about that. Yes, we did start a political party. Yes, it was, the fan base was up to around 80,000. I put a lot of money into it. And I was usurped back in late 2017. Was it 2017, early 2018? I don't remember. Again, I don't look back at the past, but I will look back at that and tell you that it was a blessing in disguise. It killed me. I mean, it threw me into depression. My side of the group, that wanted me to stay in charge of the party, they were fighting for me, and there was a certain point where I just stopped fighting because it's not that we couldn't win. I just realized maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not the right person to lead this. Maybe this doesn't need a faith-based leadership. Okay, that was my thinking. And in retrospect, for me, it was a huge blessing, because had that not happened, had I still been in charge or leading or whatever you want to call the Federalist Party, I would not be the same ideologically today. I would not have been as open as I could have been as far as President Trump is concerned. So what I thought was terrible was actually pretty awesome for me and my family and those who know me.
Yeah, because you're building something big, multiple platforms, and I don't think that would have happened had you stayed with the third party movement.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, what brought you around to Trump?
Just not being wrong. Me being wrong and him not being wrong, I guess. And again, this was, if you've obviously read my stuff, you'll see a transition. Okay. You'll see this is one where you could actually take it from days, certain days in 2018, especially into 2019, where it's like, okay, so I'm really harsh about this, and then I'm less harsh, and then a couple weeks later, I'm a little bit less harsh. It really was just a softening to Trump based upon, wow, he didn't do what I thought he was going to do. He did do things that I didn't expect him to do. Things are working out. He is opposing this. He's not opposing that. I could list off 15 things that I don't like and about what President Trump did. I can list off 30 things that I don't like about who President Trump is and was. Okay, the way that he handled things. But all of it combined, that sounds like a lot. But I could also list 30 things that I didn't like about Ronald Reagan. I could list 15 things that I didn't like about Calvin Coolidge, and I hold those two to be in very high regard as far as their place in the conservative circles. If we are looking for purity, there is no such thing as, you cannot apply true purity to any politician. If you're only going to like somebody if they agree with you 100%, then you're going to live a lonely life. Okay, you might as well really truly embrace self-governance. Find a cabin in Montana and hope that nobody comes knocking on the door. And if they do, be ready for something, because you will not be happy with it. The real conversion for me with Trump came when when I started realizing that he was actually doing what he was trying to do, or trying to do what he said he was going to do, even if that meant being politically wrong. He was trying to bring the troops home, and he did so very well. And he was going against his own party. Many members of his own party were trying to block him from doing that. He had, there was that big push. I don't know if you recall that big push for gun control. And I was sitting there predicting, I'm like, guys, he's going to fold. He was talking to McConnell. They're talking about nationalizing red flag laws with Rubio, and talking about
You talked about red flag laws.
But there was, not just watch, universal background checks and
insurance.
Yes, and magazine limits and all this other stuff. I thought, guys, the pressure's there. He's gonna fold. He's getting tons of pressure from the left. He's getting a lot of pressure from the right. Guys, get ready. Go get ready for your guns to. Oh wait, he didn't do it. Oh wait, what? Oh, he's defending the second. Oh wow. So he's defending the Second Amendment while half the Republicans on Capitol Hill are still saying, well, maybe we should do a little bit of gun control. That's when it's like, wow, I was wrong. Did he say the things that I like to hear? No. Okay. I still remember the infamous, this is one where I have to remind people, back in 2016, he went had some weird town hall with Hannity when he had the quote unquote softening. I think it was around August or September of 2016. And he was essentially saying, look, hey, maybe we should try to figure out a way to get these people who've been here for a long time, get them in. And the conservatives were still like, no. And I remember they were actually trying to convince this live audience, okay, Hannity and Trump taking turns saying, no, are you really willing to send back, somebody who's been here since they were 14 and they've been paying taxes and all this other stuff, and they, because they came here illegally, and the crowd's like, yes, send them back, and they pushed and pushed and pushed, but then eventually he's like, no, the base doesn't want that. He listened to us, and at the end of the day, that's the thing that made me think, that took me from opposing Trump to the point of starting a new political party, to opposing Trump and specifically highlighting the bad things that he was doing, to being fair and criticizing him when he's wrong, and praising him when he's right, to, by 2019, 2020, it's like, I mean, I still never worn a MAGA hat in public, but I will admit that I own one. I do. And someday I'm going to wear it. I didn't buy it. It was actually given to me, but whatever.
So my moment with Trump is, you kind of touched on it, the fact that he doesn't hate us. And most Republicans do. If you were to line up Republicans worst to best, Trump is easily, in that quartile of best Republicans. He's easily better than 75% of other Republicans. And when I voted for Larry Hogan twice, governor of Maryland, that I can't justify not voting for Trump while also voting for a mega rhino. You can't make that justification. Right. You have to have an equal standard, equal weights and measures. That's a biblical principle and a command, really. You have to have equal weights and measures. And you can't judge Trump to a harsher measure than you would judge another politician. And when Trump's better than 75% of Republicans, you got to take that up. You got to take what you can get with that.
Right.
Which I wish that meant more, but yeah, but that's the issue with Trump. And, that's kind of the environment we're in. We don't have a good Republican Party. We don't have an effective voice in Washington, D.C., but Trump is better than 75% of them. We can work with that. So,
yep, 100%.
So what do you think his best accomplishments were as president?
Let's start with his worst.
Okay, that was my next question. You can go with worst.
Let's work our way up. People, it's easier that way because we get to understand, when we see, because my answer for what is his best accomplishment is contingent on understanding what his worst failures were. And the number one, by far, hands down, worst failure was that he was really bad at picking people to surround himself with.
Personnel.
I mean, his personnel choices were abysmal. Imagine if he actually, and this comes with inexperience, okay? Because very much like I'm a big fan now. I've always been a big fan of term limits, but I'm also a big fan of the fact that somebody that you like today as a politician, you may not like them in the near future. And the longer they're in DC, it's kind of like radiation. The more susceptible they are.
Does anyone eventually get better?
They're going to fall. Nobody gets better in DC.
Okay, so and that's the thing.
I know zero
name
people.
Someone.
Well, here's the thing: if they don't succumb, then they're eliminated. Okay, I could make an argument for people like Tom Coburn who had to get out early. Okay, I can make an argument for Dave Bratt. Okay, I can make an argument for certain people who were in DC and who weren't getting worse from what I could tell, and maybe getting better, making more enemies, and they didn't last long. Okay, I would say that Marjorie Taylor Greene may or may not be that person. We don't know enough about her. I've spoken to her twice, interviewed her once. I think that she may be that sincere person. Okay, there's a good chance that she is. She definitely seems to, I'm hesitant. I don't know if it's real or if it's a brand yet. Okay, I think it's real, but I don't want to be a sucker. But if she is real, she's not going to make it through a second term. Okay, she might make it into a second term. She might not. But
I don't know how strong her district is, but
it's very strong. If she would get eliminated from primary or via primary, if anything. Yeah, her district is one where it was to the point of when I interviewed her, which was shortly after the primary, I congratulated her because she had won the primary. I said, "Look, you are going to be a congresswoman. There's no chance that you're." I mean, I think she probably won 75% of the vote.
Okay,
anyway,
so that's like
worst thing is personnel.
50.
Yeah. Worst thing is personnel. He was.
And who would you say his worst choices in that decision were? Like, name names.
Yeah. So the worst is in. I'd have to pick a group because unless I was there, I couldn't tell you who the individual worst one was. I would have to say that Of course, you got Reince Priebus, and this is just in the initial batch. I'm not talking about because it didn't get much better until the very, very end. But let's just start from the beginning.
So Reince Priebus, Rex Tillerson.
Yeah. Rex Tillerson,
Jeff Sessions was a good pick on paper.
Jeff Sessions was the wrong pick either way.
You think
Jeff Sessions was the wrong pick because he was, that was a favor pick. Okay, that pick didn't sit well with me. Had Jeff Sessions been a great attorney general, that pick wouldn't have sat well with me because that was one of those things where, well, wait a second, did he literally just take the first senator to endorse him and reward him, so obviously with a position that he liked? I don't like that's politics. And if there was one thing I liked about Trump, even in the old days, even when I wasn't a big fan, I liked the fact that he didn't seem to mess with politics. The political side of politics, I guess you could say, and putting Sessions in there. He was for eminent domain.
Yeah.
Okay, he was for
I'm not saying it was perfect, but
you were surprised. I was surprised how bad he was.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like
I thought he was a good senader, and I thought he would probably.
Yeah, he is a very good senator.
Yeah, he did. I wouldn't say he shocked me as much as he shocked a lot of people, but I did expect him to be better than he was. But yes, I would consider him one of the bad picks. I would say H.R. McMaster, even though he technically speaking wasn't one of the initial picks, but he was, a month late. I would say that he falls into that category. We fast forward to John Kelly. Okay, that's somebody that I think a lot of people thought was going to be. We got took by a lot of these people, and that's the part that's worrisome. It's not. I
remember being excited about John Kelly.
I was excited about John Kelly. I was excited about Bill Barr. Okay, I was excited for a couple of days about Mad Dog Mattis until I did more research on him. Okay, there was a lot of people that he surrounded himself with who just did not have his interests in mind. And here's the thing. This is where, what is the biggest breaking point with Trump and the swamp is that the swamp they don't think they're doing wrong. Okay. Most of them don't. They think that by eliminating Trump, by resisting him when he was in office, by resisting him quietly from within his own administration, they thought that they were doing right. And they didn't realize, and they still don't realize, as we're seeing today with even the Republican establishment going against him so quickly. They didn't realize, and they don't realize today, that being pro-America is being pro-Trump. Okay? They over-intellectualized it. And I think a lot of us did. I think that I've tried to do the same thing. We look at Trump and we see on paper, this doesn't make any sense. How can this guy lead the nation? But if you take your ego out of the equation and you look at what he did and how he did it, then it's like, okay. I mean, my son and I, my adult son, he used to ask me, I think the first time he ever asked me the question was approximately 2019-ish. And he said, is he really that smart in doing 4D chess? Or is he just an idiot who's extremely lucky? Or is there like some divine force that's helping him? Because he makes bad decisions, what seem like bad decisions that turn out roses. Okay. And this happens over and over and over again.
One example of that.
North Korea is a perfect example. Yeah. I mean, I disagreed with every way he handled it, and it worked out perfectly. I mean,
at the end of the day, he was willing to walk away from a bad deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
and then you blame Bolton on that whole thing. But anyway, it's I'm sorry, blame Bolton on the deal. I think there was a potential after they got into the negotiations. I think there was a potential for them to get a good deal. But they drew the line too early. Bolton did, and then they were gone, and that was over. But here's the thing: is that stumbling? Is that what is it? Inspector Clouseau, stumbling into the solution. Is that what Trump does? I don't know. I don't know if it's 3D, 4D, 8D chess. I don't think it is. I think that a lot of times he's just lucky or, as Christians, we would call it blessed. That he makes a decision. It doesn't seem like the right decision, but it actually turns out to be the right decision at that moment. I would say that, for example, his decision to pull out of Syria, I think that was a horrid decision, except it worked out. It worked out better than had they stayed. at least
Well,
in the
yeah,
short run.
like people made that out to be such an apocalyptic event, but
I thought it was
in
going to be
reality,
because
all that happened was the Syrian Kurds, which are distinct from the Iraqi Kurds, and I thought he betrayed the Iraqi Kurds, to be honest.
Mhm.
Like, and the Iraqi Kurds are historically our ally, whereas the Syrian Kurds are
Peshmerga.
not. And the Syrian Kurds were then forced to make a peace deal with the Syrian government, which
Which they
ultimately
did.
stabilized that region. And now they are basically under the protection of the Syrian government and Russia from NATO ally Turkey.
Right.
America was not an ideal defense mechanism against a NATO ally.
Right. But everyone, including me, was saying this is going to, we're just handing Syria over to Turkey or Russia or Iran or all of them. We thought it's over. You know, the Middle East is going to destabilize and yada, yada, yada. It just didn't. You know, he was right. And I don't know if because he was right for the wrong reasons. Okay. I don't think that my personal opinion is that he didn't cave out of some 8D chess. He caved because Recep Tayyip Erdogan, president of Turkey, called him and said, "Hey, I need you guys to leave. We're going to attack, and you got like 50 troops there. Why put them in harm's way? I need you guys to leave. You're our ally. You're not theirs. Get out."
And if you see, I saw a headline that said Biden was putting troops back in northwest Syria, which is a terrorist playground. If it's in the Idlib province, where Turkey has set up bases all throughout the Idlib province of Syria, so they can protect, the latest rebranding of Al Qaeda, because they've changed their name several times. I think they call themselves the JAF now, which is an acronym. But they've rebranded themselves.
They're just
several
the junior
times.
high terrorist.
Yeah,
the JV team.
And they have bases all throughout that province protecting them from Syrian incursion.
Right.
So what would you say his
said,
best accomplishments were? Are you saying this phenomenon is his best accomplishment? Like this phenomenon of making a bizarre decision that turns out to work out really well? Would you say that's...
I think that his best accomplishment was bringing people into an arena. There are more people who can be Trump supporters who never could have been Republicans. There are more people who are now Trump supporters who never would have been conservatives. And now they're coming into it.
And the political landscape is really changed over the last few years. I didn't have this question prepared, but one of the things that I noticed from the election results that we can trust is that the political divide is really between masculinity and effeminacy.
It is. I mean,
and that's the real divide in this country. It's not even, except in like 6 cities in the United States where they have North Korean margins. It's not as much urban rural as it used to be. It's, if you look at the disparity on non-whites, Trump gets a lot more male than female. And, it's kind of regarded as a woman problem for Trump, but, the Democrats don't have a male problem when, it's not looked at like that when they have a male problem. But I think that's the dividing line in this country is masculinity and femininity as well. People who recognize these intrinsic characteristics that they are born with, and then people who would prefer effeminacy or androgyny. I think that's the real divide we're seeing.
Oh, definitely parts of it. So, he did. I mean, Trump was and still is, one of the most aggressively masculine presidents we've had in decades.
Yeah, right? And his performance, like a lot of people said that his first debate performance was bad, but Hispanics actually, like the Telemundo, loved his debate performance.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a proper calculation. For those who don't recall, his first debate he was stopping Joe Biden, interrupting him. He was provoking him. He was trying to get him rattled. It was the right call. I mean, if I was a political strategist working on the Trump campaign, doing debate prep. It's exactly what I would have said. Look, you gotta expose him for the dementia laden dude that he is. You just gotta rattle him. So when he starts talking, jump in there, do your thing, be your guy, and insult the heck out of him, or just break his train of thought so that when he's going to respond to you, and then he's going to look back at the camera and he's going to freeze because he's going to forget his train of thought. That didn't happen. Okay, it was.
So you're saying it was the right strategy. Oh, you're saying it was the wrong strategy.
No, I'm saying it was the wrong call for what it was supposed to accomplish. Okay, the whole idea was to try to get him rattled, but it had a positive effect in other ways.
Yeah,
it revealed to those who perhaps hadn't seen him before like that, who didn't. Maybe they're coming into they didn't watch any of the 2016 election. They only know him from his tweets, like you said, for example, the Hispanic male voters. Who they knew sort of what he was doing and what he's done before, but they'd never seen him one-on-one with anybody, because he doesn't go one-on-one. He only goes one-on-one with reporters, and those he usually shuts down pretty easily. Now on quote-unquote equal footing, for him to still dominate in that way, whether you view the strategy as positive or negative, it still does have that positive effect in that regard as it pertains to the people that you're talking to from a masculinity perspective.
Now, my answers are actually kind of different from yours. You talked about his best accomplishments and worst accomplishments being very political in a sense. The appointments that he made being his worst, and his landscape transformation being among his best. Whereas, I think his best accomplishments were on foreign policy. Like, I think the United States did not have a very coherent foreign policy prior to the Trump administration, and even midway through the Trump administration, there wasn't much of a coherent foreign policy because, John Kerry was, let's pick a losing fight with Russia everywhere in the world that we can. Hillary Clinton was, let's start color revolutions. Bush was, let's get into never-ending wars that don't actually advance American national interest. And, you can keep going back until like Reagan and Bush won in the Cold War, where there was a more of a coherent policy. But after
there was an enemy back then.
Right. And then you look at, since post-Cold War, there hasn't been a coherent world foreign policy. And I think Trump broke ground in trying to create a coherent world foreign policy. And it kind of started in Riyadh, his speech in Riyadh. And, people don't realize this, but Saudi Arabia has become far less Islamist than prior to Trump. They're far less Islamist now.
You could blame some of that on MBS, but his push, at least from a public perspective, is to make it less Islamist. That's the modernization of Saudi Arabia is based upon the notion that they thought that they had permanent control over the most important asset in the world, and now they're realizing that, hey, this
Russia and America can outproduce them.
We're not going to be the top dogs always, and so we need to diversify. We need to make more friends and stop literally rattling sabers.
And then when you talk about Israel, he had, was it 3 or 4 peace deals in his last 4 peace deals with Israel?
3 peace deals with 4 nations. Yeah.
And that's major accomplishment. He just bypassed the Palestinian issue because, they don't really care about, the only thing that the Palestinian Arabs want is no Israel. They don't really want to be their own country because they were, happy to be ruled by Egypt and Jordan respectively in the Gaza Strip and West Bank area. Like there's no ambition to become their own nation. It was always to have no Israel and then Arab rule in that area. And then you got to look at Iran. I think he did really well against Iran, where we defeated them in multiple military encounters without engaging in a full-scale war. Like we were able to target their top leaders. And I think that's a far more effective strategy especially taking out their, what was it, Qasem Soleimani was his name, and people like that. So, of course, you can also mention the Paris withdrawing from the Paris Accords, and then rescinding the Iran deal, like stuff like that. And I think his worst accomplishments are, because I kind of blame Trump for locking down the country. Like, if he had set that tone that we're not going to lock down this country from the start, he would not have lost re-election. And I think his decision to embrace lockdowns cost him his presidency, because it created the environment which all the election irregularities occurred in. So he created the environment for his own undoing. Instead,
it's a tough call. We can look back, hindsight is 2020. We could say that if he didn't lock down the country or participate in the 15 days to slow the spread or whatever, that could have been like, oh my gosh, he's trying to kill us all. We need to have our second impeachment now. And they might have been able to get it. So we could say that it hurt, but then we could also say, how many people talk about the Swedish model? Right?
Well, I thought Belarus had the greatest response in Europe, where they just didn't lock down and suffered they did suffer political consequences, but that was a color revolution.
Right.
And I think that's what you're going to see a lot more of with the Biden in power, is you're going to go back to seeing more color revolutions. I mean, when you go back to when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, you had the Arab Spring. It started with Tunisia, then moved to Egypt, where the Obama administration completely abandoned the Egyptian leader. And then you see the Muslim Brotherhood take over Egypt, and then he gets ousted in a coup by the Supreme Council of Armed Forces. And you see that Egypt's a lot more free with the military oligarchy in control of that country, rather than the terrorist who was, what was his name? Mohammed Morsi, I think. And then Libya, which was even more overtly bad, where you see that the Obama administration and NATO, and so it was an international effort, ousted Gaddafi, who was a defeated enemy. Like, he's a defeated enemy of the past. So he's not a threat anymore. But, they kind of championed that nostalgia of he's an enemy to oust him. And then what is he replaced with? The same people that gunned down our ambassador. And then when you read about that, the Obama administration had CIA in that area, and they were doing like a weapons collection. And then you read about that Ambassador Stevens was in that area because he was meeting with the Turkish ambassador. Like, that's what he was doing there. And I believe the idea was that they were going to collect those guns from the Libyan rebels, give them to the Syrian rebels. And, the Syrian rebels were the latest rebranding of Al-Qaeda. At that time, I believe they were called Nusra Front, or Support Front. And then the JV team, the Islamic State. Those were the two Syrian rebel groups that had actual territorial holds. Not this free Syrian army that John McCain touted.
Right.
They were in Turkey. They had no holds in Syria. And when Trump kind of like reverses that, he says, we're actually going to promote peace in the world. I think that had, first, when you stop the colored revolutions, and we can also talk about Ukraine, like that was a color revolution as well. And then it becomes Joe Biden's personal piggy bank.
The Democrats' personal piggy bank.
Right.
It wasn't just Biden.
You're right. So, that's what that was. That was a color revolution that they politically profited from, or financially profited from. And Trump stops that. And then we start seeing these peace deals. So I think that is far more transformative of a U.S. foreign policy than one that seeks endless wars and with no end game, and then color revolutions.
Right.
And so and this is kind of the macro question. I know you kind of like wanted to squash this, but how would you characterize Trump's legacy? And the reason why I asked this is not so we can navel gaze at the past, but we need to understand this going forward, what it is. The lessons learned. We need to have a lesson to learn from Trump's presidency.
Right.
So I guess that's a better way to frame the question. Like, what is the biggest lesson from his presidency?
Well, what's the effect? What's going to endure? And that's when I say I want to be clear. Those who are not paying attention to their past. What's the old line? They're
doomed to
repeat it. Yeah. That's something I want to make it clear that I'm not a big fan of that. I just don't like to dwell in the past like so many people do. There's a big difference between those two things. But when we're looking at what happened in the past that's going to affect today and endure into the future, it really is the movement itself. It's the understanding that today, right now, we know finally it took President Trump. Okay, let's say, okay, let's look at today's scenario. Today is in 2021. What is the scenario? Let's say, for example, Ted Cruz had won the GOP nomination in 2016. And he had won the 2016 election, and he was president for 4 years. I think that, and I supported Cruz, so let's be clear about this.
Right.
I think that today we would not be having a problem with Twitter, with our Twitter accounts being banned. We wouldn't have this, mainstream media would be against Cruz, but not in the same way they were against Bush. Okay?
I think they'd be against Cruz the same way they're still against him now. Like, I don't.
Well, but really. I mean, they weren't. But don't forget, they weren't against him before. If you look back, they weren't all the way against him. In the very beginning. I just lost my earpiece, so I'm going to keep talking. They weren't against him in the very, very beginning before Trump came in. They actually wanted him to win the nomination because they thought that he was going to be too conservative for the nation. They didn't think that there would be a problem with defeating him. So the media, they're opportunists first and foremost. But let's say he was president, the landscape today would be completely different. And here's the point I'm trying to get to: the swamp would not be exposed the way that it is today. There would still be this. We now know, and when I say we, I'm talking about a lot more people. Okay, there were people that knew before. There's still a lot of people who don't know today, but I would say that tens of millions of Americans now officially fully realize that the uniparty Republican Democrat establishment is an actual thing. That Mitch McConnell, the difference between Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer is semantics. Okay, it's issue based, but not politics based. I think we know now today, as a result of President Trump, the mainstream media, they had to fire every weapon. We know that voter fraud is a big thing. We know that big tech absolutely despises us. We now know who our enemies are. If it wasn't for Trump, we would not know these people. As I'm talking about as a whole, as a bulk.
The one difference,
how bad it was,
how
bad it really is
between Trump and Cruz. Yes, I would agree the electorate would be different, but you're right about Trump being a revealer. It's hard to be a wolf in sheep's clothing with Trump around. He kind of is like the shears that come away, that the wool, and you just see there's a wolf there, and it's very difficult to be with Trump around. He has revealed, who the rhinos are, but you also see this effect in the church where you see the Trump derangement syndrome in the church, and you see all these people like David French, then they hate Trump so much they're adopting critical race theory and ideas like that. So he has this very revealing effect on culture. And I think, that's one way to characterize his legacy. I just think how I would kind of characterize it, I think there's just too much political naivete. And I think that goes back into how he made appointments early on and what you would say were his biggest failures. I think Yeah, you look at what Joe Biden has done within the first month, like he's not politically naive. I don't think he's running the country. I think there's a regent over him, but they're firing all the Trump loyalists. They're getting their executive orders in a row, and then just they got them already drafted, and they're signing them and putting them into effect. Like, hate the player, not the game, because that's how the game is played. You fire. Trump should have fired the Obama people and then didn't. Like, what's his face? James Comey should have been fired day one.
Right.
And he didn't make that calculation. I think how we learn from Trump is that we need to have people who know how to govern better. Like, Trump started a movement, and the movement's good. But we need someone, I think we need to pass the torch to someone that can run the movement a little. We cannot afford 4 years of missed opportunities. If we get back into the White House, we cannot waste a second. So you characterize the GOP as dead in 2017. Would you say the GOP is better off now? Or is it also dead now?
Still dead. It's definitely dead now. The GOP is in shambles. What is the difference between a Cruz or somebody else being in charge, having one versus Trump? Okay, picture like this. We see those Venn diagrams, right, where there's kind of that overlap, and a lot of time, we've gotten used to the right versus left, Republican versus Democrat paradigm. That's the exact paradigm that it would have been with Cruz or Rubio or Jeb Bush or whoever, any other Republican wins in 2016, and we wouldn't have seen this. What Trump did was he pushed a lot of Republicans away, but he brought in a lot of people who would never have been Republicans, but who would be Trump supporters. He brought in a lot of people who would never have voted their entire lives. They finally found somebody who they could vote for, who they could be, who they could learn about, okay, who wasn't going to bore them to death. He created a separate, I don't want to say, I know that I know he's a Republican, but he was only a Republican by the fact that most of his ideas aligned with what the Republican Party was doing. But more importantly, his ideas, for the most part, were very much more aligned with what the Republican Party should have been. And therefore, is the Republican Party dead? It is as dead as he will allow it to be. Right now, there's a battle for the soul of the Republican Party. Is it going to be, the swamp, the establishment, the Mitch McConnellites? They're pushing really hard. They're pushing really hard to bring it back to the status quo, to bring back more Bushes.
I'm not sure if I agree with your character or your conclusion. Like, I actually think the Republican Party is better off now than it was, because, there was always less, single-digit, good, decent Republicans in the U.S. Senate. That was always single digits, but now we know it. Like, so that part I don't think has changed. But what has changed is these Mitt Romney types, they're on their way out. I just think they have like a break the glass moment. I got to virtue my signal, and then I'm going to have my editorial in the Washington Post or New York Times saying I'm done from the Republican Party. I think that moment is closer to happening than those people getting, than you seeing a Mitt Romney type as the GOP candidate in 2024. So I think Trump has actually improved the Republican Party.
Yes. I would say that's one way of looking at it.
The optimistic way.
Well, it's the way, listen, if we know what should be, okay? We know how things should have gone. But they have demonstrated that they will not, Trump demonstrated that they will not allow themselves to lose anymore. In other words, with this whole voter fraud thing, they have revealed the extent to where they're willing to exert control over media, over the mindset, over the donors, over everybody that they need to exert control over. And the Republican Party is a part of that machine. So if, one of the three things is going to happen, okay, either Trump is going to not participate as much. He says he is going to, but let's throw out the possibility that, what, he just decides he's not going to anymore, or something happens and he's just not going to do it. That being the scenario, the Republican Party will fall back into its old style. But the thing is that there's always been dissenters amongst conservatives. Now there's dissenters amongst conservatives and, the I guess you could call it the populist wing of the party. Okay, that's option number one. Option number two is that he breaks, we all break, and it's not just about dissenters. It's that, this is your scenario where it's like, what, we're going to go our way, and you guys are going to either line up or we're going to get rid of you. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm not, part of the reason I don't agree is because we've got Mitch McConnell until 2026.
I'm not fully optimistic on the execution, but I do think Mitt Romney is more likely to drop out of the Republican Party and make a big show out of it than someone like him is going to take it over again. Right.
The thing is that let me ask you this: have you used Parler?
I tried. It's not a good product, and I can't.
What about Gab?
That one I'm on.
Okay. So, which one is bigger?
I think Parler's bigger, but I'm not sure. That includes a lot of Saudi Arabian accounts.
So Parler is much bigger. Parler, I know that's got Dan Bongino on the team. I know that now they have Mark Meckler on the team. Parler is it is funded by the Mercers. Parler represents essentially, in the way that they're handling everything, in their ideology, from their old CEO, the ideology of the owners, the direction that they're pushing it. They actually literally were trying to pay leftist influencers to join the site. Okay. They are the Republican establishment. And I'm on Parler. I love Parler. I want to be clear. I like Parler.
They erased my account, so I can't really use it anymore.
So. Well, I don't want to be against Parler, but let's be clear. I love Parler relative to Twitter, but I love Gab much more.
Gab's actually really, I've totally come around on Gab, where I was kind of fading it at start, but then I tried it and it's actually really good.
It's really, really good. It's a great product. But but the point I'm trying to make, Ray, is that we would like to say that, oh my gosh, our eyes are open. If our eyes as a conservative movement, as a nation, if our eyes were truly open the way that we like to think we are, Fox News would be gone. Okay? Do you watch Fox News?
I haven't watched Fox News in 10 years plus.
And after the election, during and after the election, millions of Americans had their eyes open to the fact that Fox News is against the conservative movement. They were against Trump. They were against so many things.
They've always been this gatekeeper.
They've always been. Right. Exactly. And the thing is, now they should be gone, and they're not. They're in the process of getting stronger. You are overestimating the ability of people to discern. Okay. And I'm talking about conservatives. You look at this and you say, oh, there's no way that Mitt Romney. Listen, I will guarantee you this. If Trump does not run in 2024, and that's why they're trying so desperate. If your perspective was right, then they would not be trying to get rid of Trump, because they would think, okay, so somebody else will come along. They know that Trump can win. So if they can stop Trump from winning, Ray, I've got to go any second.
No, I was going to say, I have a short list of their candidates for 2024, and the establishment candidate is Nikki Haley. That's still an upgrade from Jeb Bush, but it's not much of one. But if that's the establishment candidate,
there's no upgrade or downgrade. That's the thing, is that Nikki Haley she's still the swamp.
Yeah, I agree.
You say that there's not going to be a Mitt Romney. If Trump doesn't run in 2024, and they're trying their hardest to keep him from running, if he doesn't run in 2024, the Republican Party, I will make my bold prediction, in February of 2021, if Trump doesn't run And if nothing else crazy happens, like nobody else emerges, a second Trump or whatever, Donald Trump Jr., if nobody like Trump or no major MAGA person runs, I will put it at a 95% chance that we will get another Romney as the 2024 version of Romney. Not because we're not angry about him today, but because they control what the majority of Republicans and conservatives think. Republicans are still going to Fox News. Republicans are still reading Daily Caller and Washington Examiner. Republicans are still it's going to fade, Ray, is the point I'm trying to make. We might be all angry now, but
let's do a rapid fire smash or trash. I'm going to list a candidate and for a possible candidate for 2024. Smash meaning let's see him run. Trash meaning trash him. Trump 2024.
Smash.
I would trash. Like I think hand the reins off to someone better. Ted Cruz.
Let's go back to that one then real quick. I think it's important.
Okay.
Let me reiterate. If have you ever? That's the wrong analogy. If Trump doesn't run, we'll call it 50% chance that he runs. Okay, if he doesn't run, that remaining 50%, whoever it is, has to be somebody who can match him. You say you're looking for a better candidate. I'm saying that you need somebody who can be embraced by his crowd. Because you could say, oh well, let's get in Donald Trump Jr., who might be pretty good at it, or let's get in well, I don't want to spoil your list, but let's get in somebody who's going to be good. Are they going to be so good that they can take the people, that 10, 15, 20% of Trump voters who would only have voted for Trump, and who literally, if he's not running, they won't even look at the election again because they've been too burned by the 2020 election. Okay. If it's not, the reason that I say, I'm definitely for smash Trump is because if he doesn't run, then we have to find somebody who is spectacular. It can't be somebody who's good enough or who's a better candidate or who, hey, they're a lot like Trump or they're America First or they're in favor of Trump. And today, I don't know of anybody who would be better except for possibly one of two people. And hopefully they'll be on your list.
On the list.
Okay.
Just got a reader comment saying, do young people / next generation watch Fox News? The last I saw, I saw a stat that said their average viewer age was like 65.
Yeah. But
so I'm guessing the answer is a no. And
the average Republican mega donor age is 68. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, folks, the unfortunate part is that minds are still driven by money. Okay, whether we like it or not.
So the Fox News influence is really about how they can trickle down because they're kind of like the ESPN of conservative media. So next on the list, Ted Cruz.
Lukewarm. If I have to pick, I'll say smash.
I think Ted Cruz has been like a day late and a dollar short.
Yeah, but
I'd like to see a race where he's in it. Like if I had an ideal race, it would be him and then a few other people on this list.
Okay.
Nikki Haley.
Smash. Or trash.
Trash. Like if you think that Bubba Wallace was not exaggerating about his noose, then if you're going to virtue signal over that, you have poor judgment, shouldn't be in politics. Ron DeSantis.
She's just an idiot. Smash.
Yeah, I think he is Trump without the grading persona. And if you've seen what he's been doing in Florida these last few weeks, it's perfect. He's taking on big tech. He dropped election fraud legislation today. And what was the other? And, he's been a champion of reopening and freedom. So I think he is the closest thing to what you were saying was someone who's fantastic and can capture that Trump base. I think he is the best candidate in this field so far. Josh Hawley.
Smash.
Okay.
I like him. I do.
I can't see myself pulling the trigger for him in a primary, so I got to
any politician
no.
who is willing to lead a prayer to a group of people not knowing that he's on camera. I have to I have to smash that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about
And I don't like
story.
that. So I hope people could take it out of context and they could take this video and they could say, oh, Trump should be smashed. Rucker hates
No.
Trump. Can we use something? I'm just going to say yay or nay. How's that?
Sure.
Thanks. Because that's why I keep getting confused. Yeah,
Christy,
smash that out.
Yeah, it's kind of like, more of a music connotation, smash or trash.
I got you. Okay,
gotcha. Christy Nome.
Yay.
I like her better as a VP than as a president.
We don't know yet, but yes,
Marco
I want her on the
Rubio.
ticket. Trash.
Yeah.
Or no, nay.
Yeah. Tom Cotton.
Nay.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Mike Pompeo.
Nay.
Really? I actually like Mike Pompeo. I think he's Mike, or he's got the Christian bona fides that people credit Mike Pence with, but he's actually more capable. And I think on foreign policy, he was the guy that got America First done. So I actually think Mike Pompeo is actually.
He'll make a great senator. He would lose harder than Bob Dole.
Wow.
If he ran for president.
That's a hot take.
Have you ever listened to an hour of Mike Pompeo?
No.
Okay.
Don't.
The reason that you haven't is that nobody ever has. Nobody has been able to survive, to listen long enough to Mike Pompeo to experience a full hour long speech. I was asleep after 20 minutes, and I couldn't take it after 40. I'm listening to it in my sleep. I was starting to have weird thoughts. So no, I think we're okay with that, right? You're not asking who
this isn't
yay or
about
nay on
endorsing.
who I would like to. Yeah, but you're not saying who I would want to. We are still talking about elections. We're not talking about if I could anoint. Would I like to see a Mike Pompeo in the White House? Sure. Yeah, I think he would do a very good job. So in that part, it would be a nay. Do I want him to run in 2024? No, not at all.
This is about whether you want them in the race.
Yeah, no.
Mike Pence.
No.
I mean, he had no political future before Trump, and then no political future after Trump. Larry Hogan.
No.
This is a foil, whereas I actually want to see him in the race just to be made an example of. Like, I want to see him be a whipping post.
If I were to guess, if I were to predict, if Trump doesn't run, I would say that Hogan is the most likely Republican nominee.
I disagree with that. And then Don Jr.
Wait, no, but you also disagreed that you still think that without Trump that it's that people aren't going to go.
I think Ron DeSantis without Trump stands the best chance. Is the front runner.
Ron DeSantis, I would love to. He would be my favorite of everybody you've listed so far. He would be my favorite. I would love to see a DeSantis Noam ticket. Okay, that would be my ideal ticket at this stage. Ron DeSantis, I've been following him. I was endorsing Ron DeSantis for president back in the early 2010s, long before Trump was even running for office.
When he was in Congress.
Yes. So I've been a huge fan. I've interviewed him, before he became governor. So with that said, he has a lot of potential to be destroyed, very similar to Trump. And the question isn't whether or not he's a better version of Trump. The question is whether or not he has that unique Trump ability to survive against controversy, to survive scrutiny.
Well, we're seeing him go on offense, and I think that's
exactly, and that's why I'm not saying that he wouldn't be, but again, we're the root of our disagreement is that you still believe that we the people have control over the messaging, that we the people are fed up and tired, and I would say that we the people that are able to do this, that are able to see through and who understand the swamp, is it more than it was before Trump? Absolutely. It's still in the millions, not the tens or hundreds of millions. If you were to take your average Republican today, take your average Republican, somebody, and say, hey, do you support Trump? Oh yeah, absolutely. Ask him, okay, so what do you think of, do you watch Fox News? Would you watch Fox News? What's your thoughts on Larry Hogan? There are too many sheep even within the GOP. Okay, there just are, and I don't think it's going to get better. There's a reason why Washington Examiner, Daily Caller, and Fox News still have the bulk of the mind share when it comes to Republican voters. Somebody asked about the Fox News thing. Where do young people go? Where do they go? I mean, you're young. I'm not
Daily
talking about
Wire,
you.
Blaze are probably two of the places I think younger people go. If you look at Daily Wire, they basically they rule on Facebook. I mean, I think they also tailor their message to Facebook. But
and they are switching very quickly away from a pro-Trump message. They are trying to embrace more of an establishment message. They have been for a while. The Blaze, not so much. The Blaze is a little bit different, but that can shift. I do agree with that. And I'm not, I've interviewed Jeremy Boring over at the Daily Wire, and I like what they're doing conceptually, but as far as ideologically speaking, they're aligning more with the establishment than with the America First MAGA movement, whatever you want to call it.
This actually goes back to what you said earlier in the stream, where you talked about how, like, one of your biggest, with the Federalist Party, you talked about how not working with Christians was a strategic error. And I think that's kind of the issue with Daily Wire, is they don't really have a Christian presence. I mean, I've heard. Oh, he is? Is he? Because usually it's like Matt Walsh's Catholicism, which isn't very, which he has said some very heretical things. And then, so a lot of like Catholicism and Judaism, but not really, they don't really have like that Protestant evangelical presence. I think, my opinion, I think that's the root of their error. And you see that, Ben Shapiro isn't as, he will cancel certain voices that are very pro Christianity and pro biblical values.
Oh, absolutely.
So last on the list was Don Jr.
I would definitely support him.
And I listed him as opposed to the other Trump children because he would be my preference for Trump children. I still think Ron DeSantis is better, but as far as him versus Ivanka or Eric, I don't like those latter two. I think Don Jr. would resonate most with the movement that Trump has created.
Right. No, wholeheartedly agree.
All righty. So that is the conclusion of the list. And tell us all where you can be found.
NOQ Report. That's the best place to find me. NOQreport.com. You can find me on Twitter, JD Rucker.
For now.
Yeah. Gab, Parler, everywhere. I'm JD Rucker. So I am JD Rucker. Easy stuff.
All righty. Now, thank you for joining us. And I believe this is the conclusion. And subscribe so we can catch you on the next one.